What's up guys, it's CG Kids. So in this video we're going to cover what cocaine addiction is like. For those new to my channel, I am a recovering poly addict. I have 2 years of sobriety. On this channel we share our subjective experiences with addiction and recovery to further educate the general public and to give addicts and their loved ones hope that sobriety is possible. So my guest for this video is Zarak. Zarak has 18 months in recovery from a pretty intense addiction to cocaine. I found him through his YouTube channel, Underdogs of Recovery, where he shares his experiences with addiction and his story to help others. I also listen to his music. He's a hip hop artist that goes by Stylez. Anyways, he's going to document his story and it gets pretty deep and emotional. It really captivated me in its ability to really take me there, and it kind of made me go back and relive my experience to some extent, and I got a lot from the interview. I felt pretty humbled afterwards, humbled that he came from such a dark place and turned his life around to where he's at, and humbled that he was willing to be so emotionally vulnerable and sharing his story with me. So we're going to cover how he got introduced to cocaine and how the addiction progressed. Then he's going to go through his childhood trauma and how some of those events played out to affect his life to this day. And finally, we're going to go into his journey of recovery and struggles he's faced, including relapse, which he'll share with you guys. So the first question I asked Zarak is how he got introduced to cocaine and how the addiction to the drug progressed over time.
So I got introduced to coke when I was like 28 and a half years old. I was throwing like these huge parties at like a warehouse that my mentor, my vocal coach, he had like this school of rock and he would let me rent it on the weekends. I'd never tried cocaine before. I mean, up until 28 years old. And basically I had all these people coming over, and who comes to a party after 2 o'clock? People that do coke. And so I remember I got like blacked out drunk one night, and I kept seeing all my friends do it throughout the weeks, and they seemed like they were safe and okay. So I was like, screw it, I'll try it. And so I started doing it and lost my fear. And then basically from 28 until the peak of my use 2 years ago, it was just regular for me to go to the bars on Friday, Saturday, drink a bunch of beer, get with a group of friends. I was very social with it, and, you know, get a couple grams and we would just have a good time. There was obviously a lot of scary moments where I felt like I was overdosing. I mean, you know all about that. A lot of scary moments where I was like, okay, I'm done. And I would quit for 2, 3, 4 months every now and then. And I was very functional with my cocaine use up until the last year and a half. I worked online, so like I did digital marketing for some record labels, and I was making a sufficient enough money to get by. I didn't have a 9 to 5, and basically once the addiction started taking over and my online business started failing, that's when my use started revving up. I got into a very codependent relationship with a girl who was a former meth addict. She crossed her addictions to just drink and do weed now. And it was a very volatile, codependent relationship. And once that ended, I went on what I like to call the dark night of the soul, just before I went to treatment. And for about 6 months, I started selling coke to pay my bills. And I was doing really high quality cocaine for 3 to 4 nights a week. I would binge. It was just this process of binging and then purging and like recovering and then doing it again. And at that point, my life had became completely dysfunctional. And basically, towards the end, before I went to treatment, it just got so bad that I wasn't enjoying being high anymore. I didn't really get high anymore. I couldn't get drunk, and my life was just a complete mess, and all my demons were just eating me alive. And I was at the point where I wanted to commit suicide, but I didn't want to because I love life, but I was just ready to go.
Next question I asked him is about his childhood trauma. He details some of the experiences, so I'm going to throw up a trauma trigger warning. There's going to be discussion of domestic violence and physical abuse, and I'm going to timestamp where that happens.
There's trauma on both sides of my family. So growing up, I mean, my earliest memories, literally like my earliest memory was just like seeing my dad just chugging Budweisers, walking into my own bedroom and he's hiding in there and he's smoking weed. There was never any physical intimacy with my dad. I don't ever remember him ever telling me that he loved me until I was much older. He was only 24 at the time. I didn't understand that he didn't know how to love himself. So as a child, I took that as like something was wrong with me. and I wasn't even conscious of it. But ever since I was young, I felt this like gaping hole inside of myself. And you know, my earliest memories are seeing my dad drink. He was very violent, domestic violence with my mom. They had a very volatile relationship. My mom, she has her own side of trauma. Her stepfather, unfortunately, sexually abused her for 10 years. And her mom was a bipolar schizophrenic, the one from Germany. And so my mom was very traumatized, and my parents trauma bonded, and it just kept the cycle going. And basically, you know, my mom was very emotionally unavailable for me as well, even though she was like there and like never drank or did drugs. So like my childhood, there was just a lot of emptiness. There was a lot of like wanting to be, just wanting my parents to be proud of me. But all I would hear is like, oh, he has ADHD, or the worst one is, you know, like you're just like your dad. And in my family, my dad was deemed as the bad guy. So growing up, I always just felt like something was wrong with me. And then, you know, in fourth grade, they diagnosed me with ADHD, and I'm on methamphetamine. And that just reassured me that something was wrong with me, because I'm one of only two kids in the classroom getting sent to the principal's office all the time. And at this time, we were living in poverty. There was just a lot of physical violence. This was when I was around 10 years old. And this is like towards the end. And there's two stories that I recount as like the most traumatizing events in my life that I think that really affected my abuse of alcohol and cocaine. And one of them was towards the end. My dad was in and out of jail. He was one of those kind of guys, and he would always physically, verbally abuse my mom. But one night it got really bad, and my brother at the time, who's an artist as well, who we have a lot of music videos out together, Tony Sway. He was dealing with they diagnosed him with schizophrenia when we were younger. He was having a mental breakdown, and he was a little bit older than me. And I just hear my parents fighting one night, and I kind of in a delirium myself, because when I think about those post-traumatic stress moments, it's it almost feels like a dream. But my brother reassures me that it happened. And basically my parents are fist fighting, and my mom was pretty strong. Like, she was not no slouch. And she got her licks in, and I just hear my mom screaming, and I run out and I see my dad like having her pinned to the ground and punching her. So I run into my brother's room, and I grab his baseball bat, and I ask him to help me. But he's so messed up from his schizophrenia, like he's super triggered. If you know anybody that has schizophrenia, when it's really caused by stress. And when he was literally like going into a really, really strange state. He was not there. She was like, bro, are you all right? Like, we got to help mom. And he was just like zoned out. So I grabbed the baseball bat, and I hit my dad in the back. And it fucked him up really bad. And then, you know, I don't want to go too much deeper into the story, just because it's just kind of dark. But anyways, I saved my mom's life that night. And then still, my parents, the next morning, this is the fucked up part, is like the next morning, they're kiss and make up. And so that was my childhood, of seeing my parents get in crazy fights, and then they make up. And it's just not healthy for a kid. And the last kind of straw was, I remember I came home one day. Luckily, I had a lot of good friends when I was like 10 years old, and I kind of got away. The first 10 years of my life, there was a lot of poverty and drama. And I got away. I'd go to my friend Kenny's house, or my cousin Devin and Logan, and they kind of had money. So I saw what it was like to have a normal life. And I'd go to my friend's house, and it was clean, and like, you're not allowed to cuss, and like, you had curfews. And I was like, how come I don't have that? You know? And I always knew something was wrong about my childhood. And I came home one day, and this was towards the very end of my dad's relationship with my mom. And I took a toy into my bathtub, and my dad I don't know what the fuck was wrong with him. Maybe he was coming down off crack. I don't know. But he came and took me out of the bathtub, and like threw me 6 to 10 feet. I was a small kid at the time, into a wall, and bruised all my ribs. And that was the first time my dad ever laid hands on me. And I remember just being like, you'd think I would cry, but I just was numb. And I trace it back now to thinking about all the things I went through. no wonder I like Coke, no wonder I like alcohol, because it just numbs me. Because my defense mechanism as a child was just to numb things, because I wasn't wise enough to deal with that type of trauma. Um, and and then during that same time, around that same period, my mom, after the incident, my mom was like, "It's over, it's over." Of course, they make up again, and we go to, this is like the last thing, we go to a pizza place, and we're all having fun, and all my brothers and sisters and cousins, and of course, my parents could never not go a night without fighting, and of course, they start fighting in the middle of the pizza place. I get in the car with my dad, and my dad just looks at me and he's like, "You're not my son," even though I am biologically a son. He's like, "You're not my son, and I don't fucking love you," blah, blah, blah. Once again, you would think that I would cry, that I'd feel hurt, but I just went numb. And those are probably like the most traumatic experience I had, and they've all involved my dad. So then after 10 years old, my mom finally left. She got a job for the state of Washington. We bought a house. We had a nice car. I didn't see my dad for years, and my life went from like poverty and all that domestic violence to just a normal life. And my life was relatively normal throughout all my teens. My mom kept a job. It was stable. I really took a liking to sports. In high school, I became a all-conference football player, had scholarship offers from different schools. I love skateboarding. I got really into that. I love basketball. So I played sports. And then, right around when I was 16 is when I discovered music. And I'll talk more about that later. But I found my passions. And so when I was in those ages, I didn't really do drugs. I didn't experiment with drugs, except for a few times. Like I smoked some weed with my friends, but it never stuck. It never stuck with me. And so I didn't experience any drug addiction in my teenage years, because I saw what it did to my dad, and I was like, I'm never going to be like that, which is a shocker because as I got older, my addictions kind of took place in my mid-20s. My addiction coincides with my relationships because of my attachment and trauma issues, and I would attract usually this. I love a woman that would love bomb me and make me feel good, and I had this girlfriend who, I was like, just she put me on a pedestal, and I still kept using around here, and that caused a lot of issues with us. Basically, what happened is she finally decided to leave me on Christmas, like a couple years prior, and I thought I didn't care, but once I found out she had moved on and she had like met another dude and like was gonna move in, and she was really done with my ass, it like opened like my trauma, and like I just went into this really dark place. And like some of my darkest memories were, I had this friend who used to sell me stuff, and he had like this really isolated house that everyone would party at. And I would go, I mean, this guy just had, he had just, loads of cocaine and money. And I would go there, and I just remember just doing all these drugs and just trying to numb, because I couldn't believe like this girl that I was in love with, and like she lived with me, and she had a stepdaughter that I took care of, and we got really close. And she like finally left, and like I know she's with another guy, and like she says that she's happy, and like it just opened up those worms. And so I couldn't deal with that, the rejection, even though I'm the one who broke up with her. As soon as she rejected me, I couldn't take it, and I just remember just doing all these drugs at this house, and this one night I broke down, and I just was like, I can't do this anymore. And I remember like walking home from the bar, and like my pants are falling down, and I'm like smoking cigarettes, and I'm like walking to the store to get cigarettes and more alcohol, because I had totaled my car in an ice storm. My car that I had bought when I made money, I totaled it on the way to my drug dealer's house in a snowstorm. That's how much I wanted to party. And I remember just like my car being totaled, and the sheriff's there, and I'm calling my ex-girlfriend asking her to like pick me up, and she just like doesn't care. Like she totally don't care about me anymore. And I'm just there, and I'm like, I feel so alone. My music career's shit. My girl left me. I just totaled my car. I have no money. And I just was up for 3 days doing blow and drinking. And my family was estranged from me because I lied to them about what I was doing. I just didn't show up for stuff. And I just remember feeling just like, I don't know, man. It's like I felt like I was dead, but I was still alive. And it was the darkest chapter ever. And one night, these are kind of like accumulation of nights of things that happened. And I remember one night I just came home and after all that stuff, and I just like literally fell down to my knees and I started crying. But I started crying tears of joy because something in my intuition, whether it was God, like I think it was God, a higher power, it like kind of let me know, like, I know this has been hell for you, but it's going to be over soon, but it's going to be a long road. Because I kept telling myself, like, this bad chapter's got to end soon. It's got to end soon. And it just seemed like things just kept getting worse. And I mean, there were so many nights where I was hoping that I just didn't wake up. I mean, there was many nights that I overdosed on cocaine and I didn't die. Like, I was sweating. My heart was like, I thought that was it. For some reason, God kept me here. I still question why, like, I never died from that stuff, especially mixing cocaine and alcohol together. And that was kind of like that was all that stuff happened over a period of a couple weeks. And I had reached out to Michael Gonzalez from the show Intervention just on Instagram, and he started texting me, and I told him my life story, and he was just like, dude, like, you have a lot of complex trauma, like, you need to get help now, or it's just gonna get worse. And so that was like kind of like, I say that in the moment with my girl in the car and all that stuff, that was kind of like the darkest part.
And finally, I asked him about his journey of recovery and some of the challenges he's faced and some of the things he's managed to accomplish and where he's at today with his recovery journey.
Basically, I remember the day I packed my bags out of my old apartment, and it got to the point at my old apartment where it was so dark in there from just how I was living. Like, I couldn't stand being there. And just remember packing my stuff, and I drove to Portland, and ironically, my twin sister, who doesn't struggle with addiction, she picked me up, and like, she's the closest person to me in my life. And I get emotional thinking about it because it's just like, my sister, who's my best friend, and I hadn't been around her for years because of my addiction. And just her picking me up, and it was like I felt like God had just had my back, and like this nightmare was finally over. I knew it was going to be hard, but I felt finally like this weight off my back. Like, I don't have to worry about police anymore. Like, I just don't want to do this. It was a real surrender. Treehouse is really about brotherhood and family. And I just developed these like relationships that I missed, that I had when I played sports or when I was younger. And I went through a lot of hell in Treehouse recovery, a lot of heaven, a lot of hell. But right when I walked in, dude, like, it's 4 dudes in a room, and we're on like military style bunk beds, and I'm 250 pounds at the time. I'm still that big, but I'm more muscular, but like, I was not in great shape. And the kid's like, hey man, you got to take the top bunk. And I'm like, dude, there's no way. And so there was a lot of that in Treehouse. They're not about bullshit. They call you out on your stuff. It was a program of accountability. And there was a lot of things like making excuses and all these different things victimization that they took out of me. And typical day is we wake up, work at 5 a.m. for like 2 hours, 3 hours. It was a lot of hard work, like the most physical, excruciating stuff I ever went through. But it was fun because you're there with your friends, and at the end of the day, you feel good. And they implemented yoga and meditation, and we would do talk therapy and group therapy, and we would do these cool outings like go camping or stuff like that. But the treatment center was unique because they allowed us the freedom. You could relapse whenever you wanted if you wanted to, because we got bus passes and we were downtown Portland. We could go anywhere we wanted. They kind of just gave us our freedom. And that was my experience at Treehouse. And it was amazing. I was able to get 6.5 months sober there. But you know how it is with recovery. You go to treatment, and I'm like, I've got the magic pill. I'm good. And shortly after I graduated, I started feeling, I knew that I still had some obsession to go back home and party one last time. And I didn't want to think about it. But after I graduated, it's like, boom, you're out of this bubble. And now I got to get a job. I don't have any belongings. The jobs I'm getting are, 16, 17 an hour. Like, I'm just like, there's no future in this. And I have a pattern of running and catastrophizing. And sabotaging myself when things get good. I've always been that way. When I had the most success in my music career, that's when I became an alcoholic and did coke. So the counselors were aware of that, and basically towards the end of my time at Treehouse, I was living in the treatment house, even though I was a month and a half graduated, and it was time to leave. And I packed my stuff, and I left in a way that I shouldn't. I didn't tell anybody, and my mission was to relapse because I felt like I did all this work and I have nothing. I have no girlfriend. I have no money. They're telling me I have to go move into an Oxford house, and I visited one of them, and I was like, oh man, like if this is what sobriety is, dude, like I don't want it. And so I packed my stuff, and um, I went back home to Olympia, Washington. And right when I got off the freeway, I bought a 12 pack and threw away almost 7 months of sobriety. I remember the first night I felt this rush because, when you're in treatment, it almost feels like you're in prison in a weird way. Even though I love that recovery center, it's just like there's a lot of people watching over you. And I came home and I got back with my friends that I party with. I love these guys. I've known most of them since I was a kid, but we're about partying. And I remember we're just drinking, and I'm like trembling because my anxiety from like running away from the sober living house, even though I wasn't technically in treatment anymore. And we're drinking, and I'm like, I'm not doing any blow. I'm not doing any blow. Of course, I do some, and next thing you know, I'm fucked up. And my house manager from back there is calling me, and I'm like, oh man, like I'm sorry guys, I love y'all, blah blah blah. Quickly, I had got like a $1,500 check from like music royalties, literally right when I left, and so I I was very scared, man, to be honest with you. Like I had left everything, my apartment, all my belongings behind to go to treatment. I had nothing to come back to. I had no money. I had a 20-year-old Jeep Cherokee that I still own. No girlfriend. I was just, you know, just kind of in a weird spot. And I started feeling those feelings of loneliness and failure, like I'm a failure. And I just wanted to, I said, you know what, I'm going to go buy a bunch of liquor, rent a hotel, and get a bunch of Coke and just party until what happened. I don't know what's going to happen. So I went on like this really sick binge, and went back home to my favorite bar, and I ran into some really good people, but deep in my spirit, I knew this is what I wasn't supposed to be doing, because like once you're exposed to the reality of all this stuff, it changes everything. And I ended up going to one of my friends' houses, and then we did a bunch of blow, and there was some friends and girls, and I got so drunk that I woke up the next day. I did not know where I was. I found out, okay, I'm at my friend's house. I Ubered to go get my car that was parked at another friend's house. One of those really awkward Uber drives when you're coming down off blow after being up for 2 days. You just feel like you're dying, anxious, and I'm just sitting there, and I feel completely abandoned and empty inside. And I said, I can't do this anymore. And I get in my car. I'm still drunk and high. I have nowhere to go, and I have to call my mother and ask her if I could stay with her. And she's the last person I want to see like this. And so I get emotional thinking about it, man, because it was just like fucked up, man, to like drive my car back home and have my mom see me like that. And I had to detox on the couch. And I was just like, I can't do this to her. And we had this moment where my mom broke down and we both started crying. And her friend's son just passed away from fentanyl. And my mom just grabbed me and she's like, I don't want to lose my son. And at that point, I was like, I'll do whatever I have to do to get clean. And I called Treehouse, and I have a friend named Jacob Evans who runs Hope Guides in Idaho. He's a Treehouse graduate and works administration, but he started a new program in Boise. And I called him, and he was like, bro, thank you for calling me. He's like, I have a second chance for you. And there was a place called Eagle Creek Ranch. It was a beautiful recovery treatment on a ranch out in Boise, Nampa, Idaho area. And I was like, let's do it. And I spent my last couple $100 and went on the plane, and I lived in Idaho for the next 5 months. And I went to that treatment center. And I mean, I had a great experience there. They really helped me learn the power of AA. We went to a meeting every day. I'd never lived in the southern Idaho. It's like, country, probably similar to parts of Texas where you're from. And I'm from like the Seattle Olympia area, which is more hipster and stuff like that. And I really liked it. It was a beautiful countryside, really nice people, very clean city. And I met a lot of good friends there. And I was doing really well. but I started struggling again, like I always do towards the end. And I was just tired of being institutionalized, and I was in treatment at that point, dude, for a total of 7 months in inpatient, and then overall 11 months in sober living. And I just decided I didn't want to do this anymore, and I packed my bags, and I literally did the same thing that I did the first time I left treatment. I went to the same friends, got alcohol, and I relapsed. And I was back at ground. This is in August of this last year, and I'm like, I did it again. And I knew, I said, I want to be back home in Washington. I have to figure this out. And so I allowed myself to screw around for like about a month. And then an old girlfriend of mine took me in, who's in recovery herself, and she gave me a place to stay, and she pretty much helped me clean my life up. We kind of had a relationship. Didn't really work out. I'm single now, but like she helped me out, get on my feet, and I just said, I know I have the skills to stay sober, and I have to prove that I can do it here because I love where I'm from. And I had this vision when I left Idaho that it was time to come home. And I prayed about it every night. And in Idaho and Boise, it was like 100 degrees for 3 months straight. And that morning that I decided to leave, it was overcast with rain, just like where I'm from. And I took that as a sign for me to go home. And I drove my 20-year-old car. I didn't know how I was going to make it. Fucking 9 hours to make it back home. And speaking of that, I just wanted to share that part. But I'm living with this girl, and I start going to meetings again. And I was able to put together about 4 months of sobriety since that relapse. And so I've been able to stay sober, being home. I became a certified peer counselor, working with at-risk youth, which has been very rewarding. And it's like really working that step of the 12th step, or working that service step, and helping these kids from broken homes, teenagers, young adults. Some of them struggle with addiction, and that's enabled me to keep sober. But I always know in the back of my head that relapse is, and I'll even ask you about that, is like relapse, it happens. And on my recovery journey, the last 18 months, I've relapsed multiple times, and it's always after a significant amount of recovery time. And what I've learned is every time that I relapse, it's because I stopped doing the things that got me sober. I stopped going to meetings, or I stopped hanging out with my friends. I stopped. There's something that happens, and I start isolating, and it's like this self-sabotage cycle. I don't know if I even want to ask you the same question. Like when you relapse, do you notice that too? Because it's a very it sucks. Like relapsing really sucks, and you feel like you just wasted all these things. But now when I mess up, I'm able to look back and I see, okay, this is what I did wrong, or I'm reenacting that old behavior. What elements do I need to add to my life to like get this going?
I hope you guys got some from this video. Be sure to check out Zarak's YouTube channel and his music. I'll link to that in the description. Also, subscribe to this channel for future content. Feel free to reach out to me. I'll post all my socials in the description. Yeah, it's been a while, but I love you guys still, and I always will, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.
But all I ever feel is numb. The party is loaded with people, but I feel alone. I thought this was gonna be fun. The darker the feelings, the further I run. Cigarette smoke consumes my lungs. Think about last year, I saw my dad in a hotel. He was off them drugs, gave him a hug. 16 years since he's seen his son. But it's all love, I'm breaking the chains, removing the pain, no trauma remains. I'm lost in a high, but I'm coming down tonight.